All right, Damien, whenever you're ready.
Very good. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us here at this month's event. Actually, it's bi-monthly, the event, and we're going to have a great presentation here from the amazing Josh McJilton into a subject that I am truly honored to hear about and I love very much. But first, let me just tell you who it is and who we are here. We're South Florida Tech. This is changing. We used to be the old Palm Beach Tech. Now we're changing and moving and expanding and ever growing. We have an expanding number of great members, and we have an expanding number of great events. Let me show you some of the events. Well, what are we? We're building Palm Beaches into a tech hub, and we're changing how people see Florida and South Florida, especially, to something that's truly tech related. Want to follow us? Want to find out more information? Of course, the old Palm Beach Tech on Twitter is the best way to do that. But you want to put some questions here for Josh, for myself, for anybody, for the future, for the current, for everything. Building SoFlo, South Florida, will definitely be the way to reach us. I'll be monitoring this, and you can ask questions through that channel, and I'll make sure that Josh can answer those questions. Of course, the best way, the best Slack in the world, and I've checked the whole world. And after checking the whole world, I found out it's actually South Florida Slack here. That's the best one at all. Also, this meetup, as well as several other ones, especially mine, can be found at southfloridatech.com/meetups. A lot of people always ask me, "Hey, Tim, what are the best events?" Of course, they're they're South Florida Tech events. But if you don't have something particular that if you don't want to wait for the next one and you want to see whatever things, all of Florida's meetups that are related to tech are at southfloridatech.com. Enough advertising. I want to hear from Josh, and so do you. Josh, Mr. McJilton, can you introduce yourselves? Because, my friend, I'm excited to hear you.
Yeah, well, thanks for that great intro, Damien. Let me go ahead and share my screen just to support the conversation here. As Damien said, my name is Josh McJilton. I'm the CIO at Pharmacy Development Services, or PDS, as we like to say. And an interesting thing here in this tech talk conversation, the pharmacy development piece there, the development is really about business development, not software development. Even though we're going to be talking about software today and some software solutions we bring to our pharmacies, just want to clarify, we're really focusing on helping our owners build better businesses, not just software. And so I'd like to start with a little bit of background on PDS. And often in these conversations, we start with what we do or even who we are. But at PDS, we like to steal a line from Simon Sinek, and we always start with why. Why does PDS exist? Why are we here? And really, it's because every single person on our team, to a person, we believe that independent pharmacies are the best place for patients to get the care that they deserve. And so we believe that independent pharmacies deserve to thrive. Every single thing we do, every person on our team, every program we take to market, every solution that we consider radiates out from the central belief that independent pharmacies deserve to thrive. And it's a tricky business. Independent pharmacy is complicated. It's full of regulations. It's full of non-intuitive realities and challenging competitive practices where small independent pharmacies are facing off against some of the biggest companies in the world. And so helping them thrive is no small task. So let's talk about how we do that. What does it actually take to help an independent pharmacy thrive? I think that's important because as we look at the solutions we're going to talk about in a second, putting them into context, I think is often useful. So we use what we call our pharmacy performance framework. This is a diagnostic set of key performance indicators. You see this wheel over there on the left that's really focused on looking at all 360 degrees of an independent pharmacy business to help us prioritize the opportunities that we have to make improvements, to help us avoid risks that they might not spot coming otherwise, the owners and the teams in these pharmacies, and to help us make measurable, specific improvements in areas where we have expertise and we have tools and we have team members that have done it before. So we think about these four areas that are the quadrants of this framework. We think about the financial piece. If your numbers aren't adding up, if we're not making a difference and improving your bottom line, something's not working. We've got to go back to the drawing board. We think about team because in independent pharmacy, very often the team is the competitive advantage that they have over big box retailers down the street. And so having a strong, engaged and passionate team is key to competing in this industry. We talk about growth because strategic growth, thoughtful growth, and most importantly, profitable growth is critical. It shocked me when I started to work with these independent pharmacy owners to learn that very often pharmacies that are filling only 10% of their scripts at a loss actually underwater. If you're only doing that 10% of the time, you're probably better than average. If we can get you down into the single digits and only fill 6 or 7% of your scripts at a loss, you're A+. And so in that world where you could be filling that much of your business at a negative margin, you can grow yourself out of business. And we've seen it happen. So growth is critically important to approach thoughtfully. And last, we think about operations. If your operations are not a solid foundation upon which to build this team and the sustainable growth, you're going to struggle. And so we use this framework here, and we use these 4 different areas of focus and the key performance indicators wrapped around it to help us pinpoint the areas where we can make the biggest impact. So what I want to talk to you about today specifically, and in this clickbaity bit of a title of 4 clouds in one, I really want to walk through a real use case where we, or a small team, have used public cloud services to stitch together a pretty sophisticated, and I'll say I'm proud of it, a solution that lets us punch above our weight class and deliver some real insights to pharmacy owners based on their data, but also the collective wisdom of the data from all of our members, thousands of pharmacies across the country. So I also want to then kind of explain how we put it together, and then share some of the key lessons that we learned through that process. And if you're embarking on a similar journey, hopefully these lessons will be useful. So let's jump in. Let's talk about where we're using these technologies. And really it comes to life as we think about a member portal that we've constructed that gives our members access to a couple of different tools. Inside this portal that's available, and I keep saying members because it's just so built into my DNA, but those are our clients, the pharmacy owners that make the decision to invest in a relationship with PDS. It's a membership, and it's an annual subscription for us to help those pharmacy owners create better outcomes in their business, and we call them members. So if you hear members, think clients, and you'll be on the right track. So our members have access to this portal, and here they can participate in discussion groups and exchange ideas and knowledge with each other. We have a knowledge library full of interesting, helpful resources and templates and tools they can use in their pharmacy. And then we also have a data analytics solution, and this is where these clouds really come into play. Inside this data analytics piece of the member portal, we're stitching together data from their pharmacy dispensing system. So every pharmacy, every prescription that they fill, every prescription they receive is processed through this dispensing system. And we receive a nightly feed from every one of our member pharmacies that has all of the scripts they've filled that day, or in many cases, it's a historical feed. We just get an updated, here's the last 2 years of scripts every night. And so with that data, we then look for patterns based on what they're dispensing for their patients, where there's an opportunity to create a better health outcome for a patient, because we see that patient's on 3 different therapies that we could actually, there's a combination therapy that can be combined, all 3 of those drugs into one, and reduce their pill load and make it easier for them to stay adherent so they can take 5 pills instead of 9. Or we see that there's a newer version of a drug or a therapy that manages that condition and may help them actually manage it better because they only need to take it once a day instead of 3 times a day. So again, helping them make sure that the patients are taking their medications and therefore better managing their conditions. And so these insights that we pull out of that dispensing data are ultimately surfaced here in the portal. So with all of that preamble, let's jump in and talk about the clouds, the big headline here, the 4 different clouds that make this all possible. So they're the ones you might expect, right? The biggest on the market. We use a whole series of different services from Amazon Web Services, so AWS. We use a specific visualization tool from the Azure Cloud Platform. We'll talk about that. We use an API management tool from the Google Cloud Platform that helps us expose our insights to other partners who can call into our warehouse via an API we constructed. And then last, we use Salesforce. Salesforce is our community cloud. So that whole portal that we just saw, that's built and it runs on Salesforce, which is great because it directly integrates into our customer relationship management piece of Salesforce that we use. So we can see all of that data from our members interacting with our portal to our own notes of our interactions with them in a single place. So let's look at how those things all come together. When we look at AWS, this is really this is the meat of the solution. What we're doing here is we're using Meetup. Meetup's an ETL tool that we can get from the AWS marketplace. And it's an AMI. You launch an instance with Meetup and you pay $1.37 an hour or something. And you have a fully baked, ready to go ETL tool in seconds. We're using that ETL tool to actually go out into the world and collect the data from all the different sources that we need. The vast majority of those sources are just SFTP, right? We just pull the data back with the old school SFTP and we drop it into a S3 bucket. Some of the things are directly transferred in via S3, but the majority of it is collected with Meetup and dropped into S3. Then inside Meetup, we've constructed a sophisticated data transformation and enrichment pipeline that pulls the data out of the flat files in S3, lands them into a Redshift data warehouse, and then processes that data to identify the insights or to find the opportunities. We'll talk a little bit more about that pipeline in a second, but the extract piece of the ETL really is us collecting data from our members and other public data sources that lands into S3 and then transforms through a pipeline in tables inside our Redshift warehouse. That's the first cloud. That's what's happening inside Amazon. The second cloud is, I mentioned Azure, and we're using Power BI as our visualization tool there. So inside Azure, we've got a Power BI premium instance that is running a whole series of reports that we built, visualizations that we built that query Redshift either nightly in a batch format and cache it, or in some cases we actually do real-time queries because the performance turns out to be better, surprisingly. And so Power BI is querying Redshift and building these visualizations. Then we jump into the third cloud. We're back into Salesforce now. And here we're taking the visualizations that we create in Power BI and we embed them inside a page that we've built inside our member portal that is our data analytics page, our program. We call it Smart Dispense. So AWS is effectively our data tier where all of the model of the data exists. Power BI is our visualization tier for the insights that we're pulling out of that data. And then Salesforce becomes the harness that we use to deliver that to members with all of our authentication and authorization and all of the other member user management features sitting inside Salesforce. So that's the kind of the key pieces of the three clouds. We'll talk about the fourth one in a minute. But I do want to take a closer look at Meetup and this tool here that we're using to build the ETL pipeline. It's turned out to be a really, really helpful accelerator for us because with this kind of old school ETL style of data transformation, with this one tool, basically two people have been able to construct this entire pipeline. And because it comes with so many components that help you accomplish different tasks. So what you end up doing is stitching together a lot of different actions. You can kind of see here where this is just one example of one of the components in the transformation process. But as we're enriching data from other sources, as we're validating the quality or the correctness of the data that we've received from our member dispensing systems, or as we're pouring through that data and looking for those insights about patient health outcomes that we can identify based on rules that our pharmacists on team help us write, all of that's processed through these pipelines that we develop in Meetup. And then ultimately that lands back into identified opportunities or calculated insights that are stored inside Redshift so that we can visualize them. So this has been a really interesting tool that I'll admit, I was a bit skeptical at the beginning that an ETL tool would be as helpful as it's turned out to be, but it's really been an accelerator and a point of leverage for a small team like ours. So jumping back to this view of Amazon with all of effectively our data tier, Power BI as the visualization tier, and then Salesforce as the harness for users to actually interact with, that's only three clouds, right? We're missing one. So let's talk about the fourth cloud and how that came into play. And the fourth cloud was, or is, we use it today even, is Google. And this is where we built this API that wraps around the insights that are already sitting inside Redshift. And we were surfacing directly to our members in our own portal with Power BI. But those insights could live elsewhere. They could be surfaced to folks actually closer to their current workflow. One of the things we found in working with users is that, while they like PDS Advantage, which is the name of our member portal, while they like that portal and they like the opportunities that it provides them, it's another system, it's another tool. And at best case, they've got to alt tab out of their dispensing system and over to their browser and work inside PDS Advantage to find insights. And so that little hiccup in the workflow is enough to cause some folks to do less than they would or not engage at all. And so we really had this challenge to find a way to bring the insights we were already calculating, already surfacing in our own portal. How can we bring them closer to the workflow that users were in every day? And so what we built was an API layer wrapped around those insights in our Redshift warehouse using Lambda functions. So we have AWS Lambda functions that are actually doing effectively, it's a bunch of queries that are querying the Redshift warehouse to pull out insights. And then using Apigee, which is Google's API management platform, it lets us have a very robust external API with the developer portal and with all sorts of generated documentation that for partners who want to call into that API, query those insights and display them in their own software platforms, it gives them a very professional and a very polished experience for developing against the API we built. So what we did then with that API in place is we worked with one of our great partners in the independent pharmacy space, a company called Amplicare, and we added the ability for our members that are already working with Amplicare to find other opportunities for their patients around a series of different insights that Amplicare provides. We're able to write inside that work list that our members are already used to using, we are able to embed our own series of insights. And with that API in place, we've got other partners that are developing against it so that we can surface those insights either directly in a pharmacy's dispensing system where they work and fill prescriptions every day. And you could even imagine alerts happening. We're talking to dispensing system partners about this, where an alert could notify a pharmacist or a technician in the moment of a fill that they're about to fill something that either could be a problem or more helpful could be there could be an opportunity to get a better outcome for that patient if you click this link, consider this thing that we've identified as an optimization potentially to that patient's therapy. So really that API gave us the ability to take the insights that were kind of squirreled away and locked away in our own portal and push them to more members through more channels and make them more accessible. So hopefully we get a higher rate of engagement and action on those. And we've seen that. We launched that API almost exactly a year ago, and we have literally thousands a day of opportunities that are being considered and acted upon by members. And so it's great to see even that extra little step to put it one bit closer to the workflow that members are familiar with makes a difference in engagement. So I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't take a moment to talk about how we did that. We are a small team. We really, when you look at the technology team within PDS, it's me and the other guy, me and our product manager on our team, Adam. But the partners that we worked with are really what made this possible. And there were two key partners that were critical to making this happen. Not trying to do a commercial for them, but I just want to say that it wouldn't be possible without these great partners. One is Bluefish, a company based in Austin that I have a long relationship with. And so that was a kind of a no-brainer when it came to helping us with the architecture, and the heavy lifting of the Meetup implementation was done by the Bluefish team. And then actually improving, which is the new name of, I'm drawing a blank on it now, but it's a company that I met through the South Florida Tech group. And I was introduced to the team there through this group. And they did great work for us on the Power BI reports and the implementation. And so they're based in Atlanta, but they have an office here in West Palm Beach. And they did really excellent work helping us enhance and add to the visualization capabilities that are sitting inside that Power BI tier of our application. So great result of the networking and the communications that happened through this group. So let's talk about the lessons, key lessons here. One of the things that really, it's probably obvious and maybe goes without saying, but I thought it was worth repeating, is that for a small team like ours on a limited budget where we needed to be able to test and have the ability to scale if things went way better than expected, or have the ability to constrain our costs if things didn't go the way we wanted, public cloud was a no-brainer here. Like thinking about building anything private was just, didn't make any sense at all. So maybe the most obvious statement here for a small company, but public cloud was no questions, didn't even hesitate. The other thing that I'll admit I resisted a bit at first, but as we got into it, the interfaces between these services across the different clouds, so using the best of breed from AWS and from GCP and from Microsoft and from Salesforce, really let us get the right tool for the job that was the best fit for the skills or the capabilities of our own team and the partners we were working with. And so, I tried hard not to let us get constrained into, well, the database is in AWS, so we have to use whatever AWS tool is available. And I think that worked out well to connect those different services across these clouds and get the right tool for the job and not be constrained by some, monolithic thinking that you had to stick with inside a single provider. I'll say it again, the partners really helped create budget flexibility for us, because as we had bursts of demand where we needed to get something out in time for a release schedule, or we had a big launch coming up for a new feature, and we could communicate and plan with our partners, we're able to scale up the capacity of our development organization for a short period of time. And then when we needed to dial it back and focus on incremental improvements and really help our members just better utilize what we've got today, that flexibility that the partnering strategy created was really helpful. And there's one exception to that. A key role of the team here that I just don't think we would have been able to do as well as we have without bringing it fully on board was the product management piece. Someone who's got an organizing and centralized vision of what it is we're trying to build and what it is our members are going to get the most benefit from. The partners we worked with were great at executing on a vision that we could sketch out on a whiteboard, and they would help turn that into a design and then, fix our broken attempts at building prototypes. But without that vision, without that central kind of driver of the bus, organizing where we were going and what was most important and prioritizing the work, that really needed to be somebody on our team. And we've had 2 different product managers that have helped to make that happen. And so I think that's the one exception to the hiring strategy here that I would point out, is really that product management piece was critical for us to have on our team and consistent, because the relationships they developed with our members, which became a key, obviously our users, a key feedback loop. I just can't see how that would have worked in the same contractor model. So that's what I've got to share. I didn't want to belabor the points too much, but I wanted to share the use case, because when I spent most of my career before coming to PDS as a consultant, and we often, not often, but it wasn't rare that I felt like a consultant with a solution in search of a problem. And that's an awkward place to be when you've got all these great tools and you just wish you had some business case to go attack. And when I got here to PDS and we started improving upon the work we were already doing in these insights and these analytics we're bringing to members, it was really, it was exciting and encouraging to be working on kind of the other side of that consulting equation and have a very clear problem and then go out to market and find the best tools. So I hope that the use case is an interesting perspective on how a small team, a small company like ours has used these tools to build something that we're proud of and that our members use every day. And I hope those lessons are somewhat useful, maybe nothing earth-shattering there, but they certainly have been things that we take and incorporate into our thinking for everything we do going forward. So Damien, with that perspective, any questions coming in or anything that jumped to mind for you?
You know what? I was just preparing my own questions, and how silly of me for me not to check. I'll check throughout my asking questions to see if there's any more that are coming in. But Josh said that was spectacular. Thank you very much. That was amazing. I was fascinated with a couple of things you said. I really like your angle that cloud computing is definitely the right answer for a small team. But I got to tell you, I used to work for a company, as they always say. I don't know why nobody wants to say the companies, but I'll say it's a company that starts with T, sells cars, and isn't owned by a billionaire. So you can figure out which car company it was. And we use both AWS and Azure.
Mhm.
And in fact, we were moving away from AWS. This is something you never hear, and we're moving towards Azure, and there was different reasons for that.
Mhm.
And so I think that at this moment everybody's using all three. And I've felt I've had presentations from different people about different ones, that which is better, which is worse. And I love your concept of combine them, get the best of of each one of the services. And you're right, Josh. And in fact, I know I've worked. I have friends that work at sort of these edge locations that will host. Everybody thinks that AWS owns all the buildings, and they don't. Sometimes they sort of
Mhm.
bring in their own servers, but they're subleasing it from this large providers, like the NAT of Americas down in Miami.
Mhm.
And I happen to know that, for example, it's Verizon in there with their cloud. It's Azure and AWS. So
Mhm.
it really opened up my mind to realize that they're right next to each other. So just like
Yeah.
box A from Azure is next to box B from Azure, as long as you're in the same area. Well, also it's surprising, Irene, that that box A from AWS is right next to box A from Azure and
Mhm.
Google and all that. That's amazing. Josh, we have a question from Todd. Todd, you're welcome to speak if you'd like. Are you there, Todd?
It looks
If
like the
not,
question came in through um,
ah,
maybe
you're right.
through
You're
another
right.
channel. Um,
Perfect.
so
From
the
Facebook.
question here is from Todd is why not use GCP for file storage in the data warehouse and the cloud functions, or use AWS API Builder? Why spread across GCP and AWS? So when we were looking at the data tier, that was the first thing. Where are we going to land and store this data? And at that point, it was really either Redshift or BigQuery were kind of the two big things we were looking at. I,
Right.
I don't know what it was, the head trash that I had, but I couldn't imagine my data tier being something that smelled like SQL Server and Azure. So I was looking at Redshift or GCP, BigQuery, and the analysis that we did and the research that our consultant, the Bluefish team that we worked with, we ultimately landed at that through that selection process on AWS, on Redshift. Um, there was a pricing component to that and a scalability component that we thought about. Um,
Hmm.
but if you have an allegiance one way or the other, one of the things we liked about Matillion when we were looking at that ETL piece is they have an instance for Redshift, and they also have one for BigQuery. So we could have used either tool from a
That's
data storage.
fantastic. I like these solutions that you can sort of move from one to the other
Mhm.
and still remain with all your knowledge and all the information. It's fantastic. So Todd, this is Todd Albert. He is one big advocate of Google. He's done presentations on it.
Mhm.
Really blew my mind. So we saw some speed tests, and it was really impressive. But I like the concept of sort of choosing the best of breed of each,
Mhm.
getting some of the best solutions from each one of them. And like you said, Josh, I mean, just correct me if I'm wrong. Did you find that it was easy for GWC, Google, to query into AWS or query into? That was the only direction you had for Google, right?
Well, so the one piece we're using for Google is the API management platform, Apogee. And the reason we
Yes.
like that is because it let us go from zero to publishing a professional, complete API with a developer
Yep.
portal and generated documentation and a really robust professional experience for the people that were going to be connecting into our API in in an afternoon. We set up our account, we
Nice.
turn it on, We have some specs for the API. You put the specs in, it's a bunch of YAML, and you have an API.
Right.
So we were really impressed with that, with the services wrapped around the API management itself.
And they're
And so that's,
calling Lambda functions on
yep.
AWS, right?
Yeah, so the all the authentication and the metering and of the API happens in the Apogee platform, but then you
Right.
basically build these proxies that say, okay, this endpoint proxy to this Lambda function,
Right.
and that all that Apogee manages all that. So so the specs come out of the work that we do to construct the Lambda functions, but we put those into Apogee, and then all of the scalability, all of the metering, all of the, like, everything Apogee just made dead simple. And so that's
Right.
what we really liked about that. When we actually looked at this, and we looked at doing it inside AWS, and this was our, quick analysis. I wouldn't call it professional or conclusive, but it just seemed much harder, if I can, put a technical term on it. Like the stitching the API pieces together in AWS at the moment, we did this analysis in early 2019, so early last year, and we constructed the API across the spring of last year, and we launched it in summer of last year. And so the analysis at that point, just Apogee was way more approachable.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And like you said, best of breed. Choose the best of each one of the services. And since they're so
Mm-hmm.
close to each other, they're so fast to be
Mm-hmm.
able to transport between them and all that. Do you feel that would security be a concern? Was there someone that you felt should check certain something out so that you don't do the old just open it to everybody? Even then,
Well,
right?
I
It's
mean, that was
okay.
part of for at least for Apogee, that was one of the things that was really attractive, is the authentication mechanism built in.
Yes,
So we, like,
absolutely.
none of our partners that are querying our data have access directly to any of the services. They're only hitting this
Exactly.
proxy that Apogee creates.
Exactly.
And so it gives us a level of insulation, and all of that
Yes.
authentication of those keys and making sure that the connections are secure is managed in the Apogee platform, which is another reason we liked it.
Fantastic. I'm going to definitely double down on what you said. Product managers, I work in a company that just happens, just because of the politics, the majority of our 70 developers are in India.
Mhm.
I'm the release manager, so I'm in the United States. And, one of our biggest strengths is the fact that the product managers are here.
Mhm.
So they can be in India. That's no problem at all. But, right now it's unusual. It's COVID-19 time. But even before that, we were able to walk up to people. If it's 5 o'clock, if it's 9 o'clock in the morning, you can grab the person, sit down and say, explain the whole situation. And, a good product manager that understands the business, understands the pain points, understands the requirements, and
Mhm.
is in house. Is spectacular. And our developers, there's 70 of them, and they're all in house. I mean, we own that company. They just happen to be sitting in a chair in India, but they're our employees. And yet, yes, the having that product
Mhm.
manager that's always there in your office with you, um, at least your time zone is very useful. So great choice in those things. That's amazing. By the way, I didn't even know that Apogee was owned by Google. Did they buy them, or am I
Yeah, I
wrong
think
about
that
that?
was a relatively recent, in the last year or two, acquisition, that Google brought them into the platform.
Perfect, perfect. And good choice with Power BI. I hate the price, but I love what they can do with it. It's just spectacular. Every single place I ever work for, it's like, just don't tell me how much you're paying for it, because it's expensive. I don't know, maybe it's me, but it's
Um,
just beautiful
yeah,
stuff.
it's in our experience, it's a little more coarse grained in its pricing. Right, there's not per hour
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
utilization pricing. It's a monthly commitment to create the capacity that we needed, but and those
Yes,
chunks are pretty big. So you go from zero to thousands in the very first step,
absolutely.
but it gives us a ton of power. And it makes the ability to create those visualizations that are really engaging. Um, it makes it much easier for a broader set of folks to help contribute to that. And then with
Right.
working with the team from improving, they were able to do some um, really cool stuff inside Power BI that helps our
You've talked a
users.
lot about that. You talked a lot about your team. You really like them. I love that. I think it's fantastic, Josh, and all that. How do you feel? Do you find that your customers are in the smaller scale? So if they, or they're large enough that they will have an IT person, is it easy? Are you integrating with
Yeah.
their system? In which case, once you know the ins and out of that
Mhm.
particular system they bought, how do you
Um,
find that in the
Almost
aerospace?
never do they have an IT team. We're
Yes,
on the low
you're
end. We're
right.
talking an independent pharmacy that has 3 employees, right? The pharmacist
Right,
that
right,
is
right.
also the owner, maybe a
Yes,
technician, and maybe a clerk,
yes.
right? The whole store. And so
Yeah,
their dispensing system is running on some Dell from the 90s under the bench, as they would say.
yeah.
So the technology component is these are great pharmacists, these are great healthcare providers. They're not technologists. So what this is
Absolutely.
where we really want to make our process approachable. Um, for the data acquisition piece, we actually work with that same partner where I showed the example of surfacing our insights in their platform.
Yes.
Um, they have the connections to all these thousands of pharmacies across the country, and they manage that, those last mile connections of the endpoints to all the individual stores and bring that data in, normalize it for their own purposes, and then through a relationship we have with them, we're able to have access to that data when authorized by our members, um,
Right.
and use just the dispensing piece. We don't actually receive any pharmacy, I'm sorry, any patient data. So we don't have any protected health information. We just have, this prescription, this date, this NDC, the details about the dispensing activity itself, but not the patient.
Amazing. It's and it's fascinating to me that I always I started this business long time ago, and I started in support, and it's tough time sometimes to you just want to go over there and say, I'll do it. So I'm
Um,
glad in the it's system.
yeah, but those connections are
Fantastic.
fragile, right? If you've got thousands of endpoints like that across the country, they're
Absolutely.
fragile connections, and so maintaining those is no small task.
And that's where the ETL comes in, right?
Hmm.
That's the magic that makes that all easy to in quotes. I don't know if you can see me, but you can, right? Am I right? Or
Well, so the ETL piece is what pulls from that one main partner that collects the data from all those endpoints.
my apologies,
It
you
pulls the
mentioned
data
that.
from
Yeah,
them, but then also from several other public sources that we and
yes,
commercial sources that we buy to enrich our data.
right.
But the actual endpoints to those pharmacy systems that are running on the old computer under the desk, those mercifully we're not managing directly, but that's where having a great
See,
partner to
you
aggregate
had
and
to step
normalize.
you had to step down because I was in awe, complete awe, at what
No.
how amazing it was that you were doing. Now you're telling me, no, there's some magic man with a magic team of 1,000 men and women that are doing this for you. I love it. By the way, I'm not making fun of it.
Yeah.
You are a smart cookie. You know what I mean? There's no question about that, and I'm honored that you've seen that. Thank you for that information. This is amazing. All right. So if I don't have any questions, I'm looking around to see if we have any more questions from the virtual audience. Any one of you saying anything? No. All right. Josh, thank you very much. Is there anything you want to say, or we want to?
No, thanks for the opportunity. It's fun to share, brag on our team a little bit is always a fun opportunity. And I'd love to connect. So if you've got questions or suggestions, or, like Todd's suggestion, if we're thinking about other platforms that may be useful for future solutions, I'd love to connect. So please don't hesitate to reach out, and
Perfect.
I'll see you at the next Tech Talk.
Sounds amazing. I'm looking forward to it. This has been fantastic. Thank you, Josh. This is South Florida Tech, best group around here in tech. You'll find out all the information at southfloridatech.com/meetups, including Josh's great presentation. Check out our YouTube channel, our Facebook, our Twitter, our TikTok. What else? What's the new one that everybody's on? I don't know. Whatever it is, we're on there, right? I think so. Thank you, Josh. It's been a pleasure. Thank you. I'm honored to be this. You are the speaker. I'm the someone, the guest, and I'm honored that you were came on that. Thank you so much, Josh. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great time. Thank you.